Hello and welcome back to the Payment Expert Podcast, your source for the latest news, insights and analysis on the payments industry. I'm Lewis Thompsett, news editor at Payment Expert, and with me today is Bana Akkad Azhari, head of EMEA Global Payments and Trade at BNY. As today, as we all know, there are many new payment rails coming online across multiple different markets. New instant schemes are proliferating, and the infrastructure that underpins all that global money movement is changing faster than it has done in decades previously. So with that in mind, Bana, with more rails multiplying, instant schemes launching worldwide, how is that affecting the overall payment system, the overall payments landscape? Is it more connected at the minute, or is it just more crowded? And that obviously ties into a thing in today that we all like to talk about, which is interoperability. So what needs to be done to sort of improve that interoperability as these new rails emerge?
Indeed, we are seeing more rails come into the market, which is in fact a positive development. However, it can also create more complexity if those systems do not connect well. So the question is not just about adding new rails, it is about how do we make the overall ecosystem work more seamlessly for clients. Interoperability, as you mentioned it rightly, matters because clients are operating across markets, currencies, payment types, and they need those experiences to be more connected, which means greater standardization, better data, and stronger coordination across infrastructure and participants. So ultimately, the opportunity is to combine innovation with simplicity, helping clients access faster, more efficient payments without adding friction.
Sure. I mean, historically, if you look at the cross-border element, that has always been the hardest part. But when you have things today like a stablecoin market, or a tokenization in general, that can kind of make that part easier, but obviously adds to that layer of complexity we're seeing. So, I mean, are the new rails in some way making things easier, but also adding another layer to navigate, whether that's on ramping and off ramping, and obviously converting between sort of between fiat and stable coins and other tokenized assets?
Well, certainly, new rails can absolutely help improve cross border payments, particularly by increasing speed, transparency, and choice, but only if they connect well with the broader ecosystem. If they're introduced without enough interoperability, they can add another layer of complexity rather than reduce it. So again, it's not just about new infrastructure itself, but about making sure that it works across markets, schemes, and client needs in a seamless way. Because from a client's perspective, what matters most is simpler execution, greater visibility, and reliable outcomes across borders.
Sure. I suppose one of the other things today that we think of when we think of payment innovation and the things that consumers want to see and businesses want to see, and obviously clients of BNY want to see, is having that 24/7 round the clock payments. But does having a 24/7 operation require a different approach to things like liquidity, or is that a secondary concern? If it is, should it be a more of a primary concern? And how does the relationship between things like liquidity, clearing, Treasury change, or how do they need to change so that those 24/7 round the clock payments can actually start to feel a bit more 24/7, as it were?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And in fact, 24/7 payments are not just about keeping the infrastructure open. They also require a whole different mindset around liquidity, treasury, and operational support. Because if payment trails are always available, firms will need liquidity models that can better support activity outside traditional business hours, rather than relying solely on legacy funding cycles, which means that the relationship between payments clearing and treasury will need to become more closely connected so that institutions can respond more dynamically in an always on environment. And real time visibility will also be very important here, both in terms of payment flows and liquidity positions, so firms can make better decisions and maintain control as volumes move across different windows and rails. So, really, ultimately, to make 24/7 payments feel truly 24/7, operational availability has to be matched by financial readiness, resilience, as well as strong coordination behind the scenes.
Sure, absolutely. And I suppose there's a broader argument that that comes when those sort of always on rail or the always on rails as they are, sort of those 24/7 rails start to reshape treasury and working capital management, not just payments. Is that a transition you're seeing already in practice where those rails that have that 24/7 capability are moving beyond just payments and into other areas of business and I suppose asset management and financial management as well?
Well, yes, definitely. That shift is, in fact, already starting. Because as payments become faster and more continuous, clients are thinking more broadly about how they manage liquidity, funding, and cash positions throughout the day. And always on rails can help reduce friction in moving funds, but they can also raise expectations around visibility and access to working capital in a more real time way. So, in practice, this means that Treasury is becoming more closely linked to payment strategy rather than sitting fully separate from it. By the way, we're also seeing greater focus on how clients use better data, faster settlement, and improved connectivity in order to manage cash more efficiently across entities, markets, and time zones. So, overall, the broader opportunity is not just faster payments as a goal in and by itself, but rather a more dynamic approach to treasury and working capital management.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I've mentioned tokenization a little earlier on, but does that add something new structurally to the picture that hasn't been there before, rather than sort of repackaging and promoting something as being faster? Does it add anything differently? What can it unlock essentially?
Well, tokenization does absolutely have the potential to add something structurally new, as you say it, when it comes to helping to connect the movements of value, data, and ownership more seamlessly within the same workflow. And again, it's not just about creating a digital version of what already exists today, but rather it should be about reducing friction in how assets and cash are recorded, transferred, and settled. Um, it can become particularly meaningful in areas, for example, like collateral mobility, liquidity management, and cross border activity, where timing, transparency, and operational complexity matter. It can also open up the door to more programmable models where transactions can be executed with greater precision and automation under defined conditions. But ultimately, the real value of tokenization will come from solving real operational challenges and working alongside existing financial infrastructure in a more practical but trusted and secure manner.
Yeah, and I suppose that goes back to the first point that we made around interoperability as well, because it's having the benefits, I suppose, of those of tokenization with other means of payments and how you on ramp, off ramp those rails too. So getting that interoperability in place is obviously very key.
Absolutely. The whole ecosystem has to be well connected so that you can continue to have that seamless flow of value and the data that is needed to escort it and to accompany it in order to enable a better client experience and a more secure client experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you've been having these conversations a lot. I have, and it's around agentic models or agentic those agents for commerce, particularly. They've been entering the conversation quite largely, in a big way. There are a lot of issues around it. From your perspective, what do you think needs to be resolved before those autonomous payment decisions become a serious proposition? I suppose there are a lot of barriers to that more broadly, but from your perspective.
Well, agentic models are clearly an important part of where the industry is heading. But when it comes to autonomous payment decisions, I believe that trust and control always have to come first. Because before that becomes a true serious proposition at scale, firms need much greater confidence around governance, clear decision boundaries, and the ability to monitor and intervene when needed. Also, explainability will be critical because institutions need to understand how decisions are being made, particularly in a payments environment where compliance, fraud prevention, and client outcomes are also important. There's also the broader question of accountability, not just whether the technology can make a decision, but also under what conditions, what permissions, and with whose oversight. So I do think that the path forward is likely to be gradual, starting with a narrowly scoped, supervised subset of use cases where AI can support decisions, create efficiencies, and strengthen controls, but before moving towards anything that is much more autonomous on a broader scale.
Sure. And obviously, as I suppose agents are becoming more prevalent in our industry, you have different sort of players with different models. So I suppose almost passport-like standardization of certain models, and obviously everyone can have their own model. But I guess getting the industry toward that unified standard.
No, absolutely. So standardization to an extent is going to be important because on one hand it aids the interoperability that we've been talking about earlier, but also it sets clear governance and controls and which are important guardrails that are needed to enable the trust in in the broader ecosystem and can actually impact it.
Well, thank you very much, Bana. That's all we have time for today. Thank you again for joining me. If you're not already subscribed to the Payment Expert podcast, please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, with plenty more insights and analysis coming over the weeks and months ahead. And for the latest news as it happens, head over to paymentexpert.com. We'll see you all next time.